It was auspiced by the Methodist Church, which has become the Uniting Church. Olive Crombie was the first nurse in 1953. Initially, Olive would travel by tram to some of her clients. Sometimes she borrowed a car. So they got around initially by being sometimes driven by volunteers, sometimes borrowing cars, but moving towards being a mobile service in their own cars. Often the equipment that they were using had to be sterilised in the home kitchen of the place where they were visiting, boiling it on the gas stove sort of thing, literally that. My father, Arthur Preston, the founder of Blue Nursing Service, Blue Care, grew up in a home that was hurt badly by the Depression. He had a strong sense of empathy for people who were struggling, people who were the underdog. So it was a combination of that and, of course, the core teachings of the Christian gospel, which at their best are about serving the most disadvantaged. He took that very, very seriously. I think he was more a visionary than a businessman. He surrounded himself with businessmen. I mean, he had this amazing capacity to draw a team around him. The Reverend Brian Whitlock was certainly a major figure across decades in the development of Blue Care. Brian came to the West End Mission in the late 1950s, I think, as the associate minister to my father. So Brian's story and the story of Blue Care converge considerably. One of the laypersons whose whole life story is really associated with Blue Care is Frank Godfrey. He was a businessman. He worked for provincial traders and became a senior manager in that business for decades. He was on the Blue Care committees for, I think, well over 40 years. He's quite a giant of the Blue Care story. Well, of course, 1953, when Blue Care, or Blue Nursing Service, originated, was only a few years after the Second World War. A lot of people lived in rented accommodation, a lot of people lived in rooms. The healthcare system was basic, though available. The needs of the elderly were often only dealt with in a rather random kind of way, and that was the point at which Blue Care began its story.
By the time of the churches coming together, there were about 40 Blue Nursing Services across the state. I think there would have been, probably by that time, 15 to 20 nursing homes and various sets of retirement living. There's also the commencement of some day services, so day care services. So by the that 1977 to 1980 period, we had significant footprint in nearly every regional centre throughout Queensland. Apart from the original decisions to actually start Blue Care, I think one of the most significant, probably the most significant decision that the church made was actually to integrate all of the services across Queensland, because that really provided the platform for growing the Blue Care of today and for us making the future for Blue Care. It speaks to our history, but it also was a broader term that recognised that it wasn't just blue nursing anymore. There was all of the nursing homes, there was the retirement living, there were the services that had become part of the Uniting Church. One of it is just in the number of people we support who aren't able to contribute financially to the cost of their care. Secondly, we have a footprint through rural and remote Queensland that most others don't. In fact, As I watch what's happening in the aged care industry, I don't see many people racing to the places where Blue Care is throughout Queensland. There's not a good business reason to take on all those services, but there's a very strong and compelling missional reason.
I would say that over the past few years, the thing that has given me the most heart is taking on the Indigenous services, both in Queensland and then in the Northern Territory as well, because they're such important services, and I think we're doing them in a way that's culturally responsible. More recent trends, of course, around telehealth are very important to Blue Care. Because of our services in rural and remote areas, we're really in the aged care sector at the forefront of some of the telehealth developments. The scale of Blue Care, from one nurse to today over 10,000 staff and volunteers, from one, not even really a proper base in the West End, to 260 sites across Queensland and northern New South Wales, from a tram to 1,500 vehicles, which are travelling 32 million miles a year. It's a vastly different organisation today. Blue Care currently has 2,500 volunteers and 8,500 staff. At any one time, we have about 30,000 clients in Blue Care, and there's about 3 million community contacts a year.
Blue Care is an extraordinary Queensland story, commencing in the West End of Brisbane, but now spanning the whole of the state, to become the largest aged care provider in Queensland and, of course, one of the largest aged care providers in Australia. It has stayed very, very strongly rooted in its origins, and its commitment to its mission and values are as strong today as they were in the early days.